My homily today, I'd like to work my way backwards through the readings and even to the announcements for today. And so simply begin with the last verse that Deacon Randy proclaimed from the Gospel. Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples that are not written in this book. But these are written that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that through this belief you may have life in his name. The Gospel of John is divided into 5 sections. The first section is the prologue. Here at Christmas, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was made flesh. The second section is known as the Book of Signs. The third section is the Book of Glory. There is a conclusion and an epilogue. The conclusion was the verse that I just read. The Book of Signs are 7 signs that John highlights about miraculous powers of Jesus. There's the wedding feast at Cana, the making of the wine. There is healing of a royal official's son. There is also the healing of a man who was paralyzed at the pool of Bethesda. There's the feeding of 5,000. There's Jesus walking on the water. There is another healing of a man blind. And finally, it culminates in the raising of Lazarus from the dead. The Book of Glory has different signs. They begin with the Last Supper encounter, foot washing, a lot of preaching from Jesus, his passion, his death, his resurrection, and his appearance to the disciples. Both of those stories, the Book of Signs and the Book of Glory, give us stories of amazing grace. And John says these are to help us to believe in Jesus. But he also says these are not all the signs recorded. In fact, there are many signs that are still happening today that help you and I believe. And so that's sort of the question. What are some of the signs not recorded that help you and I believe in the power of God's love that can raise Jesus from the dead and who walks among us and also sends us the Spirit? I'll give you some ideas. First of all, some liturgical signs. I want to begin here with the Easter candle. For those of us who were able to gather at Easter Vigil, we begin with a fire outside, and the church is entirely dark. From that fire, we light this Easter candle, and we follow this pillar of fire into a darkened church. And then as we arrive in and enter in more fully, the light from here is spread through the candles that other people carry. And before you know it, this church is enveloped with candlelight. It's a wonderful scene. But it reminds us about this power of the radiant light of Christ that conquers the darkness of the night. The darkness of sin and death. And he is victorious by the single solitary light. The ideal being is as you gather here on Sunday, that's lit. As you leave, it's lit. Every time you walk into it, it's reminiscent of the eternal flame at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Always burning, always reminding us of one of the signs of the power of God. We have wonderful flowers that have remained hardy and healthy. The springness for us in the northern hemisphere, it's much easier to relate to the Easter season and new life. Most importantly, too, is this fun. The sprinkling of the water done at the beginning. I'm still listening on my arm from spring training. Do you better? How we do that. But it's to remind ourselves that we were immersed in this once before. The promises that we renewed at Easter. And this is how we promise to live, signed by this water. On this weekend, in Divine Mercy Sunday weekend, after Mass, as you heard, people can gather in our chapel to pray the Divine Mercy Chapel. Some signs of what's going on. gospel story, a favorite of mine, but I'm only going to focus on one little scene. And that is the feeling that overcame Thomas when he touched the wounds of Jesus. I think there's this like massive light bulb going off. He realized this is the risen Christ. But notice how he recognizes him. Not by the activity of the disciples. Thomas gets a bad rap, I believe. Because if they really made a difference that Jesus was alive, why were they behind locked doors a week later still afraid? But we can say Thomas was the one who doubted. It didn't make any difference in their life. But when he says, "My Lord, my God," and he touches the wounds of the body of Christ. What a profound insight. If we want to see the power of God in our midst, we truly will also see it in the woundedness within the body of Christ. I think about the number of ways parishioners help our other brothers and sisters through our St. Vincent de Paul Society. Wounded members, broken members of the body of Christ. We care for them by food that we share, just like in the first reading today. And some monetary assistance we offer for electric or gas, rent, ways that we help the body of Christ. I mentioned that we have the Jonah prayer taking place after Mass today. Parishioners willing to pray for someone. Another way to pray for people when they feel their brokenness, perhaps. The dynamics that can occur when we care for the body of Christ. Not to specifically name only two people, but I think about the long extended illness and the way people responded to John Collins and Steve Sweeten in their last stages of life. Your presence, your meals, caring for Helen and Jerry and their families. It's like being the body of Christ, caring for the body of Christ. The first reading, every year on this second Sunday of Easter, we have a reading all the time from the Acts of the Apostles throughout the Easter season, but this Sunday in particular gives us a glimpse of the early church community. We hear they were a rather close-knit group, willing to share all that they had in common with one another, both their goods and their talents. How they gathered for prayer with the apostles, and they gathered for a meal, and they gathered for formation. And when those things were happening, notice what else began to happen. More numbers grew. Somehow, what they did, how they shared their life together, how they prayed together, how they reformed together, began to impact others, and others joined the community. You know, in some ways, it's a perfect template for what parish life is to be about. Gathering together, learning and sharing faith, sharing things in common, which things we do, which sort of leads into what's taking place today. After Mass, I'd like to invite you to Mary Mother Marina. It's over in the Riley Center. It's our ministry fair this weekend. It's an opportunity, I'll come out and tell you right now, we're recruiting people for ministries. And I'm really tempted to add to the list, but I'm really restraining myself this weekend on things we need done here. Because as I walked over there, and what struck me was not so much just the recruitment, but just to bask and absorb some of the things that's going on here at the parish. I mentioned some already in the homily. We had an opportunity to see great things. We have certainly boards of people doing things, photos, wonderful photos. We have some food, some new athletic banners, 6 of them, I believe, from the past year and a half of teams that have won their leagues and city and county championships. We also have introductions to some things you might not know about, things to learn, and we have food. Did I say we have food? You know? Just to come over and sit with it. And we have some attendance prizes. We have opportunities to be with one another. So you want to see where the risen Christ is. It's in the dynamics that occur within these things taking place here at the parish. Again, just to invite you to come join us after Mass today. Come back to my opening question. What are some of the signs that you're aware of, not recorded in the book, that help us believe in this Easter power of God's love? A power that raises Jesus from the dead, who walks among us, who's present to us, and promises to be with us always. That's what we're about today. What will you name as some of the signs that you're aware of